Year 1914. The clouds of war were gathering over Europe. Britain stood at the brink of the First World War with all its might. Yet, amid the clamor of politics and preparation for war, there was one man whose eyes were fixed not on the battlefield, but on an entirely different frontier. His name was Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer whose heart burned with a desire to conquer the frozen world. Shackleton's dream was anything but simple. He wanted to accomplish a feat no one had ever achieved before, to cross the entire Antarctic continent on foot. At that time, Antarctica was considered the most mysterious place on Earth. No permanent settlements, no support, only merciless ice fields stretching endlessly. When Shackleton announced his plan, the British press carried proud headlines. Asterisk, the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. Asterisk, people were shocked yet thrilled. At a time when Europe's young men were preparing for war, this small band of adventurers was preparing to march into an icy hell. Shackleton purchased a strong ship, which he named Endurance, a name that would define the very destiny of the voyage. On November 4th, 1914, the ship sailed from London with 28 men on board. Among them were scientists, sailors, carpenters, cooks, photographers, and a handful of tough young men willing to risk it all. This was an age without radio communication, satellites, or GPS. A voyage to Antarctica meant total isolation. If disaster struck, the world would never even know. The sea journey was brutal, raging waves, towering iceberg, and cutting winds. The crew labored day and night. Finally, on November 5th, 1914, they reached South Georgia Island, home to a whaling station, their last human outpost before plunging into the unknown. The local whalers warned Shackleton that the weather that year was unusually severe and advised him to delay the mission. But Shackleton, resolute, replied, Asterisk, we shall go forward. No danger will stop us. Asterisk. On December 5th, 1914, Endurance set out once again, heading into the Weddell Sea. But soon the crew realized this was no ordinary sea. The Weddell Sea was hemmed in on three sides by Antarctica, causing vast sheets of packed ice to build up. Enormous blocks of ice floated around them and slowly began to seize the ship. On January 18, 1915, Endurance became completely trapped in the ice. The crew tried running the engines, breaking through with tools, but all efforts were in vain. The ship was now a prisoner. Time passed. Winter crept closer. And in Antarctica, winter was unlike anywhere else on Earth. Months without sunlight, temperatures plunging to minus 50 degrees Celsius, storms sweeping across the frozen expanse. Shackleton ordered that they would spend the winter aboard the ship. For months, the ship lay imprisoned. Pressure from the shifting ice grew stronger. Wooden beams groaned and cracked. The expedition photographer, Frank Hurley, captured haunting images of the vessel being slowly crushed. On September 30th, 1915, the hull split open. On October 24th, the ice pressed so violently that the stern collapsed and water gushed in. For 3 days, the crew bailed desperately, but the sea poured in faster than they could remove it. On October 27, 1915, the ship gave its final cry. Endurance broke apart and began sinking into the icy depths. The men barely escaped with their lives. They had 3 small lifeboats, a little food, and a few tents. Shackleton's dream went down with the ship. Their new mission was stark and simple. Survival. The crew pitched their tents on the ice. Space was limited. Some had to sleep directly on the frozen surface. Shackleton declared that each man could keep only 2 pounds of personal belongings. To set an example, he himself discarded gold sovereigns and even a Bible on the ice. Food was their greatest challenge. First, the sled dogs were killed. Then seals and penguins became their only source of meat. Drinking water had to be made by melting ice, a slow and exhausting process. Shackleton employed a unique strategy. He often lied about the amount of food available, insisting supplies were enough. He understood that the real battle was not of the body, but of the mind. If morale collapsed, survival was impossible. The drifting ice floe carried them further and further from land. By November 1915, the last remains of Endurance sank beneath the sea. The men were now stranded entirely on floating ice. In March 1916, they finally spotted mountains in the distance. Asterisk, asterisk, Joinville Island, asterisk, asterisk. But they could not reach it. On April 9th, with the ice breaking beneath them, they had no choice but to take to the lifeboats. After days of brutal rowing, battered and freezing, they reached Elephant Island on April 15th, 1916. For the first time in 497 days, their feet stood on solid ground. But the island was barren, uninhabited, and merciless. Many men were sick and weak. The youngest, Perce Blackborough, had lost the use of his feet. Shackleton knew that if all remained on Elephant Island, they would perish. He made a daring decision. With 6 men, he set off in a small lifeboat to attempt the 800-mile, 1,300 kilometers, voyage to South Georgia Island, through the most dangerous waters on Earth, the Drake Passage. The journey defied belief. Waves rose 12 meters high. Storms raged. Freezing spray lashed their faces, and salt water froze their clothes stiff. Weeks passed without a glimpse of the sun, making navigation nearly impossible. But Frank Worsley, the navigator, seized fleeting moments when the clouds part to take sightings of the sun and keep them on course. After weeks of unimaginable hardship, they sighted South Georgia. But the coastline was deadly with sharp rocks. 3 men stayed behind with the boat, while Shackleton and 2 others set out to cross the island's unmapped mountains and glaciers on foot. No one had ever done it before. After a grueling trek, they stumbled into the whaling station, starved, frostbitten, but alive. Shackleton wasted no time. He organized a rescue mission for the men on Elephant Island. Several attempts failed due to impassable ice, but at last, in August 1916, he reached them. The moment was indescribable. All 22 men were alive, still waiting for their leader's return. Not a single life had been lost. Against every odd, Shackleton had saved them all. Shackleton's dream of crossing Antarctica on foot was never realized. But in its place, he achieved something far greater. He brought every one of his men home alive. To this day, the story of Shackleton and endurance is hailed as the greatest tale of leadership, courage, and survival in human history. It proves that even in the harshest, most impossible conditions, if a leader holds firm and keeps his people united, the impossible becomes possible. Antarctica remains mysterious to this day, but Shackleton's name will forever be remembered among the bravest who dared